So the other day, Ethan Ralph of the Kill Stream posted what could be described as either a sex tape or an atrocity, depending on your perspective. But what people are asking is, did he violate Virginia's laws about revenge porn? Well, let's take a look at the law and the facts and see if we can apply them and figure it out. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law-Splaining the Interwebs. I'm your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. And today, we are talking about the now infamous sex tape released by Ethan Ralph of the Kill Stream, which allegedly shows him engaged in intercourse with someone named Faith, whom he was allegedly dating. And now people want to know if this violates Virginia's statutes against revenge porn. And so I figured it would be best to kind of talk through the facts of the case as I know them, and then see if those facts can be applied to the law to create a criminal case against Ethan Ralph. Now, full disclosure, Ethan Ralph is a friend of mine, and while I find the tape to be horrifying, I don't want anything bad to ever happen to anybody. That's not the goal of this, and I hope he'll take any jabs I may make about it in the good fun that they're intended to be. The question of whether or not he violated Virginia's statute is going to be pretty fact-specific, and at this point in time, I'm going to leave it as initially as it depends. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. What we're going to do is we're going to walk through how this statute works, and we're going to apply the facts as we know them to determine if a case could be made. Whether or not he would be found guilty or if there would be any bother prosecuting it is a completely different question. And what defenses could he use? We'll also talk about those. But first, let's walk through the facts as I know them, and you guys may have a little bit different view of the facts, and that's fine. Feel free to leave any corrections in the comments, and I will be happy to reassess this as I get more information about it. But I was driving across the country with a car full of children when all this happened. So I didn't watch this in real time. I was reading back on it. So if my dates are a little wrong, let me be clear that the dates that this stuff occurred at this point in time are not really relevant to anything that's going on. Neither is the alleged relationship status of any of the parties involved. Now, there are three parties that are primarily involved in this. There's Ralph, there's Faith, and there's this other guy who claims to be Faith's ex-boyfriend, although I have my doubts about the actual status of that relationship as well. But that being said, none of that is really relevant to the questions at hand. Did Ralph violate the law here? But it is helpful to have a full factual background to find out how this came about, and then we're going to apply whatever we can to the law as it exists. Okay, so that's the strategy here, and we'll see how it goes. It goes something like this. Today is Thursday, the 13th of August, and the main events here happened around Tuesday, August 11th, as far as I know. Lots of people have been questioning for a while Ralph's alleged relationship with Faith. Ralph is in his 30s and Faith is just recently turned 18. That led to a lot of contention early on as people are questioning whether or not this is a valid relationship, if there was some grooming involved. I have seen no evidence of anything like that. Plus, whether or not you like Ralph is going to probably color your opinion on that stuff. And as far as I know, though, there haven't been any allegations that he engaged in any sort of activity with Faith while she was underage. And that's an important point in Ralph's favor on that front, although that isn't the question here. Long story short, you have a mid-30s man dating an 18-year-old girl, and if I were the girl's father, mid-30s man might be less than living at the time, but I'm not, so I don't have to deal with that. Thank God. Don't. Anyway, that being said, it doesn't look like Ralph did anything particularly wrong there as far as I can see it legally speaking. moving on from that issue, many people have started to question the legitimacy of the relationship in general, because this is the internet, and the internet is full of people who like to question things and who don't like someone in particular. And so they will start to raise questions or doubts about everything that they do. That being said, with people questioning the legitimacy of the relationship at all, we started to get a little bit of internet banter back and forth. And then along emerges a new party. And this is Faith's alleged ex-boyfriend, who seems to indicate that they have direct messages that suggest that Ralph's relationship with Faith may have been something less than genuine, that maybe Ralph was lying about it, or he was playing it up, or something like that. And he released a few of the direct messages. On Tuesday, Ralph did the kill stream as he normally does, or maybe it was Monday night. I don't know the exact dates. And again, they're not that important. He had his kill stream show. And then after that show, Faith's alleged ex-boyfriend decided to run his own stream to release the direct messages that seemed to implicate the relationship between Ralph and Faith. As he is releasing these direct messages, which do show something, although that something may simply be that Faith was playing both Ralph and this other guy for fools against each other, or something like that. Whatever the case may be there, buyer beware on what you get with internet dating. But whatever the case may be, something was going on. And in the midst of this live stream, it appears that Ethan Ralph sent a direct message to the streamer, the alleged ex-boyfriend of Faith. And again, heavy emphasis on that alleged. It seems to be that his relationship may have been farcical as well. But Ralph sent a message to this person and suggested that he open the message online. And at that point, on air. And at that point, it appears to be the sex tape of Ethan Ralph and allegedly Faith. Although the allegedly Faith thing may actually play into Ethan Ralph's favor at this point. I don't particularly know. That's again one of those facts that'll have to be fleshed out to support any sort of criminal charges against Ralph, if any are appropriate. Okay, so that tape appears to exist. People were questioning the validity, but apparently it was also posted up on Streamable or something like that in full 5 minutes of glory or whatever. And yes, all of the salacious details of that tape are yours to find, not mine to share. Thank God I saw it on mute and skimmed through it without watching the whole thing, which is why I'm able to be here today as opposed to being in a hospital. But the long story short, the real question, is this a violation of Virginia's laws against revenge porn? Did Ralph violate them? So let's take a look at the law, and we'll take the facts as we know them and see where the good or bad portions of it are. And there are both, depending on what perspective you have, each way. As most criminal cases tend to do, things are always more complicated than black and white text on paper. So the statute says unlawful dissemination or sale of the images of another, penalty. Importantly, this criminalizes the dissemination of images of another person. It does not penalize the receipt of them, and that has actually been fleshed out. Now, as a brief aside, there are only 3 major appeals cases in Virginia about this statute, and all of them revolve around the venue provision, because the venue is a very permissive provision, and it allows multiple different courts to have jurisdiction over this. The nature of the internet means that someone can send someone revenge porn or something like that from anywhere, and someone can receive it anywhere. So they wanted to have a lot of flexibility in what the proper venue is. And in this case, you can actually violate Virginia's statute from outside of Virginia if you send it into Virginia. Oh my goodness. Or Possibly. But if you send it into Virginia from somewhere else, the venue can be proper in Virginia. You wouldn't have to bring this suit under some other state's laws. That's the more important thing. And the prosecutor would be bringing the suit. This is not a civil suit. This is criminal. So the charges in this case must be brought by a prosecutor. For example, if Faith was mad about the distribution of this tape, she could not bring a civil cause of action against Ralph. She would have to contact the police or the prosecutor and ask them to bring a cause of action through a criminal complaint process from a citizen, and then they would investigate and determine if they wanted to bring charges. That's how this would come about. Okay, so the statute says any person, that would be Ralph, who with the intent to coerce, harass, or intimidate. Intent is an important word. So are coercing, harassing, or intimidating. Maliciously disseminates, again, maliciously is going to be important there, or sells any videographic or still image created by any means whatsoever that depicts another person who is totally nude or in a state of undress so as to expose the genitals, pubic area, buttocks, or female breast, where such person knows or has reason to know that he is not licensed or authorized to disseminate or sell such videographic or still image, is guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor. For purposes of this subsection, another person includes, and then I'm going to summarize the next part, deepfakes. So this was a recent addition back in 2019 to the law, which also criminalized the creation and distribution of a deepfake as long as it meets the other parts of the statute. So what are those parts of the statute that we really want to focus on? Intent, coerce, harass, or intimidate, maliciously disseminates or sells any of the things. And then the question is, do we know who the person is? That's an important one. Is there some sort of image to depict, is there an effort to depict someone who is recognizable or identifiable? Are there any identifying characteristics? And then finally, was there permission? So let's get this out of the way first. We don't know if Faith gave Ralph permission to share the tape. We have no idea. No idea. So the next aspect, and we're going to go backwards through this. Does Ralph know or have reason to know that he's not allowed to share it? That's another question that we cannot answer. We cannot answer. And if Ralph were charged with this, a defense attorney would probably try to focus in on these things. Can you produce anything that suggests that maybe you did have permission, or that the permission would be ambiguous? You have to know or have reason to know that you don't have permission to do this. What would that permission be? Or what would a revocation of that permission be? Or a clear statement against it? A DM from Faith saying, lol, you can't share that with anybody though, stuff like that. Or I wish you didn't take that. Those are all questions that would have to be factually borne out by this. Another way that we could know that there wasn't permission, or at least have a good presumption of it, would be if Faith filed the complaint to the prosecutor or to the police about Ralph's dissemination of this footage. Faith says he sent this without my permission. There we go. We have now a presumption that it was done without permission. Then Ralph would have to rebut that presumption by presenting some evidence that it was either ambiguous, that he shouldn't have had any reason to know, or that he had explicit permission. Any one of those things. Remember, all of this is to be read in Ralph's favor, because he would be a defendant in any alleged criminal act. And that's what's going to be looked at by the DA if they're thinking about bringing charges. Well, how do I charge this person if I have this, this, and this that are obvious problems for my case? And that doesn't mean they won't, but it might give them a lot of hesitation, or it could just prevent them from charging it entirely. Okay, so let's get back to the beginning and this other sticky part, and that's intent. The intent to coerce, harass, or intimidate. Now, what's interesting is it doesn't say that they have to have intent to coerce, harass, or intimidate the alleged victim of the creation of the footage, right? It doesn't say that Ralph has to intend to coerce, harass, or intimidate Faith. Maybe they're saying he's trying to coerce, harass, or intimidate the third party, the Faith's alleged ex-boyfriend. And if that's the case, Ralph's lawyers would actually have to make the new argument that coercing, harassing, or intimidating is in relation to the subject of the video, not to anybody else. And the prosecutor would have to make the other case, and then they would have to determine which one of those is true. And they don't have any authority for this. So they would have to make new law. Not really, because it wouldn't be an appeals court, but it could be appealed on that basis. This is an interesting case. Usually when we think of revenge porn, we think of the person trying to harm the individual in the footage, right? Like an ex-girlfriend or an ex-wife, and you're trying to publicly shame them. In this case, I'm not so sure you can make an easy case that Ralph is trying to coerce, harass, or intimidate Faith. But you may have a case based on when he did it that he was trying to harass or intimidate Faith's ex-boyfriend. Although I think, depending on the actual content of the messages Ralph sent, they may have a hard time proving that intent against him. If Ralph meant it in fun or in laughter, that would be one thing. Now, this would be a reasonable person standard, probably. So they'd have to say, is it reasonable for you to do this in this way and claim that you're not coercing, harassing, or intimidating someone? But I don't see anything like a quid pro quo where Ralph is saying, if you do this or don't do this, I'll release the footage. And in one of the only cases on record, that was the crux of the issue around the intent, was about, this was an ex-husband who was threatening to release more things if his wife didn't comply, and his ex-wife didn't comply with their communications that were going on. So, the next part of this that we have to really figure out what even is this video in regards to the law is whether or not that is actually Faith in the video. Because from what I saw of the video, it is taken from the angle of the rear, and there didn't appear to be any defining characteristics or marks as to be able to, identify this Faith person. And I don't believe her face is shown on the video. So the question is that even Faith? And more importantly, can a DA prove that it is Faith in the video? If not, the DA is going to have a really hard time proving that Ralph knew or should have known that he didn't have permission or a license to distribute this video. Because if it's not Faith, more importantly, if you can plausibly argue that it might not be Faith, Ralph doesn't have to admit that it is. In a criminal case, Ralph does not have to say, yeah, that's her. I mean, he may have said it. I don't know. It may be in the text message, but the DA still has to prove that it is. And a very good argument with no identifying characteristics is you have the burden, Mr. Attorney, to prove. You have the burden to prove that this is who you say it is. And I don't have to help you at all as a defense attorney or as a defendant in identifying this person. So that's a really important part of this. So the ultimate questions we have to answer are, in no particular order, is that even Faith? Can they prove that that's Faith? If so, we move on to the next thing. Did Ralph have permission to disseminate the footage? Or more precisely, did he know or should he have known that he didn't have permission to disseminate the footage? And then finally, if he didn't have permission to disseminate the footage, or if he should have known he didn't have permission to disseminate the footage, did he do it with the intent to coerce, harass, or intimidate either Faith or the alleged ex-boyfriend? If he did if If all of the things are bad and it falls on him trying to coerce, harass, or intimidate the alleged ex-boyfriend, we have a real conflicting question here about whether or not the statute is considering the intent to coerce, harass, or intimidate a third party. And this all comes down to very intricate legal arguments around that point, but I think that is unlikely. If I'm the DA in this case, I'm going to try and I'm going to look at the public nature of all of this. This all happened publicly, live. It's well documented. And I'm going to say, okay, can I plausibly argue? Can I give a probable cause statement that the person in the video is Faith? Because if I can't, egg on my face in court immediately, and the case is dismissed pretty quick. If I can do that, can I show that I have no evidence to support that he would have any sort of permission for this other than his bravado? But internet people tend to have some bravado, especially when they're doing something important to own someone, right? So can I disprove the idea that he had permission? Can I go ahead and try and show that he didn't have permission to do this, or at least that I don't see any evidence that he had permission to do this? And then finally, what circumstantial evidence can I gather to show the intent to coerce, harass, or intimidate Faith first? That would be the most important party. Or in the alternative, do I risk trying to make new or clarifying law on the ex-boyfriend and whether or not he was trying to coerce, harass, or intimidate? And then finally, the malicious nature of it. Was it malicious? Was it of a depraved mind? Was he doing this to harm? Was that the intent of Ethan Ralph? These are things that the DA has to prove. I don't know. I'm not in the mind of Ethan Ralph. What I know is if anybody ever asks me if they should make a sex tape, I'll say, no, you shouldn't. No one wants to see it. Dear God, please don't. Then, should I post it online? No, don't do that. That's bad. It opens you up to potential liability. Should I post it online during a live stream of someone else who is bad-mouthing me at the time? Definitely not. You should not do that. You should in no way engage in this behavior. It's very, very bad for you to do that. It looks bad, and it may be criminal. But recap on all of this: if the DA can make a probable cause determination that is Faith, that there was no permission, that there was intent to coerce, harass, or intimidate somebody, and if it was maliciously done, if they can do that, then they could bring charges against Ethan Ralph. Will they? I don't know. If the charges were brought, it's a Class A misdemeanor, which means up to 12 months in prison, county jail, I should say, and up to a $2,500 fine. And whether or not they would actually get that much, Ralph would not be a first-time offender, so he would have a mark against him. I don't know what Virginia's sentencing guidelines are on that. That's a little too particular and out of my practice area, so I don't really care. But they would have to determine whether or not his prior conviction would have a negative impact on it. Yes, it probably would, but it doesn't necessarily mean he'd even go to jail. It might mean that the fine is bigger, the probation is longer, or that he does do a little time in jail. At the end of the day, will they charge this? I mean, that depends on the parties involved. We'll have to see. No way to know. But again, let me make something very clear to the internet. Don't make a sex tape. No one wants to see it. There are professionals who do it better, who look better, and please, dear God, don't ever do it. And if you do, keep it to yourself. Don't ever show it. Ever. 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 Anyways, thanks, guys. Hope you found this informative, maybe a little bit fun. Ralph, never again. Please. My brain and eyes can't take it. Please. Dear God, no. I hope you found it informative, fun. If you did, like, subscribe, share, all of that good stuff. Otherwise, we'll talk to you soon. Have a good night. Peace. Peace.